Hello everybody and welcome back to another tutorial video. If you don't know what I am doing here or what I'm about to cover, just give me 2 minutes and I promise you will sit back and say, whoa, I need to learn this, because what we're going to be covering is something that nobody else has addressed or even taught about. And for me to get to this point, to be able to integrate two of the most advanced topics within graphing and web frameworks and marry the two together, it has taken a lot of headaches on my end, a lot of struggle, but I got there. And I wanted to share that information with you to help you become the best developer possible, and so that you can create the most advanced applications for your users that you can actually build off of with the highest level of integration. And this is going to be a really fun video for that reason. So as you can see here, this might seem very, very basic, but trust me, this is a starting point, and what is established with this starting point is how to connect the dots between Django, Dash, and Plotly, and how to get them all to work together. This is not just a basic application. This application, as you can see, you can move it around and you are able to collect real-time movements from the user and display it into the graph in real time. You could do this into other applications that I've already built out in the past, for example, stock market APIs, and you could basically display their assets, their portfolio if you connect to the individual user's API keys. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this marriage. Other than that, down below, this is just really basic, but this is a Plotly graph. This isn't supposed to be, whoa, this is the coolest graph ever. I have built out some really, really cool graphs, but they take a lot of time to do. What I'm here to cover in this video is the absolute basics of combining Dash, Plotly, Django together. And we're going to achieve this through this django-plotly-dash module. This is a really powerful module, but it doesn't cover everything. There's a lot in the installation that you're not going to understand right off the get-go, and you are not going to be able to achieve a working graph if you do not follow this video. And I have watched and I've looked all over the web. There is nothing out there, and there are very few people who know how to do this, and I'm telling you, this is the most complete video that you will find on this subject. So with that, like I said, we're going to be jumping into Plotly. The last thing that I want to cover, just to kind of go over everything, is I want to jump into our Udemy course. If you guys are following along, there are a lot of classes that are not covered on my YouTube channel that you can only find on this Udemy course. In the description down below, I have a coupon code and a link, and you can get this for $13 instead of $19, and this will give you a good foundation to build off of so that you can build any Dash Plotly app under the sun. And I'm going to continue to add to it like I am right here, and this video is specifically going on there also, but the more advanced Django, Dash and Plotly videos are going to be solely released on there. But this is an important starting point for anybody, despite signing up for the course or not, because what like I said, like we're going to be covering, is getting you guys connected, and that's the most important thing, so that you guys can actually start building out your own graphs and adding it to your framework of choice, and so that you have a place where you can combine all of your different graphs and applications and you can build off of. So this is something that I didn't want to just exclude just to my Udemy course, because it is such an important topic and there is no information out there. And at the end of the day, I love the passion of teaching, and that's what we're going to be doing in this video. So with that, let's just jump into it. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to create a new environment, and you can either do pip install Django, or because I am with PyCharm, I just can go over here and I can create a new Django application just like this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a brand new Django application. Alright, so now that we got this booted up, we're going to make this a really simple, just trying to show you the baseline of how to get everything integrated and working. We have this templates folder. So within this templates folder, I want to add a base. This is where we're going to basically put all of our imports, and this is where our frame is going to be. So I'm just going to call this base.html. I do this for all of my Django applications just to make it nice. So right now we have the base HTML all set up. I'm going to create a home also. So I'm going to go over to my terminal. Make sure that your virtual environment is already set up. With me creating it, it was already set up. So I'm going to do Python manage.py, and I'm going to do start app, and this app is going to be named home. So that's what I'm going to name that one. And if I go back, it was brought in. So within this home application, I'm going to bring in a few things. The first thing that I'm going to need to really bring in is I'm going to need to bring in a templates folder. So I'm going to call this templates. Then we need to bring in another folder, and it has to be the same name as the folder that the app is called, because the way that Django works is each one of these folders, whenever we do start app, it builds a new app. So each folder is its own application. So it does a really good job of breaking down your project and really just trying to isolate different apps that build up the whole application itself. So now that we have home, the folder, then we can go over here. We're going to create a file, and I'm just going to say this welcome. And that's just going to be our welcome file, and that's where we're going to actually put in our graph and everything else. The next thing that we want to do, I'm going to close that templates folder. We want to go up to the home, and we're going to basically create a new Python file, and we're going to call this URLs. So what we need to do to connect everything to kind of get stuff to start rendering is we want to bring in the views. We have to add to that, and we want to bring in the URLs, and we're going to connect it to our master URLs, which is up here. So in order to do that, the first thing that we can do is we can jump into our own URLs. And then on the top, we just want to do from django.urls, we want to import path. Then we also want to do from .import views. So that just allows us to bring in our views file, because we need to reference that in the URL patterns. And then after that, we just need to declare our URL patterns. So URL patterns, and this is going to equal a list. And within this list, we're going to add our path. So our path is going to be a blank, just because it's going to be the first thing that's rendered on the page. And then we want to do views, and then we want to add something. So right now we don't have anything connected to the views, so we're going to have to actually go into the views themselves. And now that we're in the views, we want to create a function that's going to be def and then home. And within here, we want to add requests. And this is just going to return our HTML template. So it's going to be return render, and then it's going to be requests, and it's going to be our HTML template. And in order for that to show up, if you're working within an IED, we need to go into our settings, and we need to bring in our app file that we just created. So I'm going to scroll down to installed apps, and then I'm just going to do home .apps .home config. Now that is set up, we can go back into our views, and it should be able to see what we're talking about. So now whenever we say home, it shows up, and then we can actually go into the welcome.html. So now you can see that we have a little green like folder right here, so make sure that this is all connected. So that's looking good. Then we can go back into our URLs, and all we're really going to be doing is we're going to be pointing to the view that is right here. So we call this home, so it's going to be views.home. And we want to just declare it without having to open parentheses. And then after that, we want to name it. So what we could do, name is going to equal, and I'm just going to call this home. So if we're trying to declare it to route, URLs, or, like for example, a button that takes us to this page, you could just put in the name, and it makes it a lot easier later down the road. And we might see how that works later on. Alrighty, so before I move on, I just noticed that I messed up on ULR patterns. We don't need that R, that was just a mistype, but that should solve that, and we can continue on. So the first thing I want to do is I want to jump into our templates. Now that we have everything routed up, I'm going to go into our welcome, and I'm just going to do an H1 within here, and I'm just going to say home page, and we will see why we're going to do that in a second. Then I want to work my way down to the URLs. Within here, I want to go after path, and I'm going to do an include right after that, and I'm going to actually route our master folder that has all of our URLs, our master URLs file, and this is going to point to this URL of this application. So basically, whenever we first created our Django application, this is the first folder. Whatever the Django application's name is the same name as this folder, and this has our settings.py and our URLs.py file, and these basically manage all of the other applications that we bring on. So all the other little folders that we bring on, this is all managed by this master folder right here. So within here, we're going to actually route to our home URL. So within here, we're going to do a path, and we're just going to do a blank route, and it's going to be pointing to an include, and it's basically going to route to home, the file that is up here, .urls. So now that we have that done, everything should be working. So I'm going to do a Python manage.py run server, and we're going to see what we get here. So I'm going to pull this up, and home page shows up. So we have that all configured correctly, and we can continue on with everything. So like I said, whenever I first brought this in, I brought in this templates page, which is our base file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a theme into this template file, into this base folder, and then we're going to connect it into our home. So I'm just going to go up here. I'm going to create a new folder. This is going to be our partials. So with our partial folder made, we can go online, and I'm just going to go up to Google, and I found this website called startbootstrap.com themes. They have this admin portal that I will include in the links in this video, so you can easily get to it. This is a free one that we're just going to use to basically build this out. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to do the free download, and it shouldn't take that long to download. So with this download, I'm just going to unzip it. And with it unzipped, we are just going to take this and we're just going to kind of look at it real quick. So basically most of these are just pages, which we really aren't going to need. What we really need to focus on is the CSS, the images, the JavaScript, the SCC or the SCSS, and the index file. So that's going to be our main things that we're going to be needing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the application again, and then I'm just going to go into our main application, and then within here I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this static. So now that we have this static folder, this is where we're going to add all of our files. So this CSS and JavaScript, I'm going to add that in the static. So that is added. And then I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to add the images into static. All right, so images are added into static, and then the last thing is we need the SCSS. So that's going to be added into static. All right, so just make sure we got everything. Everything looks good. The next thing that I really want to bring in is going to be the index file, and this just makes it easier for my development process. So I'm just going to take this index file, and I'm just going to add it into the theme templates folder right here on the top level. And with that, we want to go into our settings. This is where we're actually going to declare our static folder. So the way I usually do this is I scroll all the way down to the bottom of our settings file, and then I go down to the static URL, and then within here I just add a few parameters that help us during the longevity of this development process. Is I'm going to add a static root. So the static underscore root is going to equal, and it's just going to equal static. Then we want to bring in a static files location. So I'm just going to do that, static files underscore location. And with that, I'm going to make sure that that is going to be equal to just static. Then I want to do the static dir, and the static files dir is going to be equal to in os.path, and it's going to be .join, and it's going to do base dirs. So base underscore dir, and then we want to do the name of the app, which is plotly underscore django underscore tutorials slash static. All right. With all of that done, we have all of our static files set up. So what we want to do now, before we do anything else, I think now is a good time to bring in the database, and then we will basically route everything up. So where we go up to our databases, we need to add a new database, but in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go back into Google. We want to go to Postgres SQL, and then you basically want to download it. So once you have it downloaded, you should be able to open up an application, and the application should look something like this. Postgres SQL 11, and then what you want to do is there should be a Postgres just automatically there, and you're going to want to click that. All right, so with us in the shell of this database, we can basically create new databases really easy by just setting up a password. We're already given a default account, which is called Postgres. So from here, if we do backslash and we could do password, we could do Postgres again. And this is the name of the account is Postgres. So with that, I wouldn't recommend adding this into a functional application, but for testing or building out an application, this Postgres account is just fine for our needs. So with that, we can press enter and we can create a new password. So you can create whatever password you want. I'm just going to put in something simple, and with that, we can create our actual database, and this is going to be a new database. So we want to do all capital letters, create database, and we want to call it whatever we want. So with what I'm going to be doing, I'm just going to call it Udemy, so that I know it's a Udemy tutorial. And I'm going to do the owner of this is going to be Postgres. And then we want to end it with a trailing comma. And with that, it should work, and we get the return create database. So with that, we can do a \L, and we should have listed out all of our different databases. We should have our Udemy one created. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to terminate it. And as you can see, we have our Udemy one right here. So now that this is set up, we can actually go into our application itself, and all we're going to need to do is we're going to need to point to this database itself. So I like to keep this one just because of if I need a backup database, we could just use the SQLite one. So the way I usually set this up whenever I do my databases is I just comment this one out. So I'm just going to go up here, and I'm just going to comment it out, and then from here I'm just going to bring that down, and that will comment that out. And I'm just going to do the same thing where I'm just going to copy this, and I'm just going to make a new one, and this is going to be the one that we're actually going to be using for our Postgres account. So the defaults is good. The engine we need to change, but before we do that, I need to do a pip install where we're actually going to install PostgreSQL into this actual application. So I'm going to do a Command C to end the running that is going on of the app that we have running right now. And what I'm going to install is I'm going to install Postgres onto our Django application. So I'm going to do a pip install Psycho PG2. This will probably not work if you're on a newer version of Django, but the way to fix this is you need to bring in binary. So as you can see, prefer binary package right here, it says that. So we're just going to do the same thing. We're just going to do a dash. We're just going to do a binary. And after that, it should install everything, and then we're good to go. So now we can work our way back up to our database. And up here, we're going to add a few things. We're just going to go over here. We're going to delete this, and we're going to reference PostgreSQL. And then we can come on down to the name, and what this is going to point to, it's going to point to the name of the actual database itself. So I'm going to go over here, and we're going to delete this, and we're going to basically add Udemy, because that's what I called my database, but whatever you called yours, whenever you created it, that's what you're going to call yours. And then we're going to go down to the user, and if you remember, our user for our Postgres account was Postgres, so it should be pretty easy to remember. So Postgres, then we need to put in our password. So whatever you put for your password, that's where you're going to add this. And my password was 1234556. Then we could go on down, and we just need to declare the local host. So we're going to do host, and then we want to basically point to local host. So with all of this said and done, in order to get rid of those red marks that we were seeing whenever we were first started up our application, it said something about migrations. What we're going to do within the terminals, we're going to do Python manage.py make migrations. And after that, we should do Python manage.py migrate. And you should get running migrations, apply, and it continues down with all the different migrations that are needed. So now with this done, we can actually collect our static. So we're just going to do Python manage.py collect static. And what this is going to do is, if you look down here where we declared all of this, with this static folder, it's going to create a main static folder within our main application. So you aren't going to actually add this static folder into a production application or into GitHub because it's just repetitive and it just saves space. But for the production of, just trying to program all this out, we do need to do that. So with this Python manage.py collect static, you'll see what it does. If I run this command, it says 151 static files copied to this path. So if we open it up again, we can see that we have this new static folder on the outside of the application, and it has everything that we brought in. And if we look at the actual application master folder, we can look in here. We also have this static folder also. So this is how you would set this up. And you don't want to add any files directly into this static folder if you want to build off of it, add images or anything like that. You're going to want to add it into your master folder, and then you want to rerun collect static anytime that you're adding more static files into into your actual Django application. So that's something just important to note. So with this actually all set up, now we can go into our templates folder, and now the real fun actually starts. So within this index folder, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be editing this a lot, and we're going to be bringing this into our base folder. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to scroll down, and we have this sidebar right here. So I'm going to go up to this UL, and I'm going to copy this all the way down until we get to the end of the sidebar. So I'm just going to continue to go down, and then we can see the end of the sidebar. So this UL, I'm going to copy all that. I'm going to go into our partials, and I'm going to create a new file, and this file is going to be called underscore sidebar. So with that, we can open up our partials, we can go up to sidebar, and we're going to copy everything. We're just going to delete it, and that's where we're going to paste in the code that we copied originally. And this is how we're going to be kind of breaking apart our actual base file. We're going to go back into our index, and then we want to scroll down to our top bar, and we're going to go up to the nav, and we're going to work all the way down until we get to the end of the top bar. So keep on going, and we can see that the end of the top bar is right here. So copy all that, delete that, go back up to partials, create a new file. This one's going to be called underscore top bar. And with that, we just want to take everything, delete it, paste in the code that we copied from the top bar. Then we're going to go back into our index file where the page contents is. We want to scroll down to where this row is, and we want to scroll down to the very end, see where that is. And we're going to take everything from there all the way up to the row itself, and we can delete all that. Actually, anything with the name content row, we can delete. We got an area chart, which we can get rid of. We got a par chart, which we can delete. We got another content row, which we can also delete. So just continuing down, continuing down, continuing down. Let's see where we're going to stop. Approach, we can delete. Content fluid, and then we got the end. So where this is, we can delete everything. And we're left with this content fluid, which ends right here. We got this container, which ends right here. And that all looks good. And then we got the wrapper ends, and everything looks like it's working. So we can also take this footer. I'm going to copy this footer. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to add underscore footer, underscore footer. And I'm going to paste that within here. Then we can go back into our index file. Everything else is looking fine with me. So where that content was, which is right here, I'm going to actually add in a div, and I'm going to give it the class name of row, and I'm going to close that off. And within here, I'm going to do a dictionary percentage sign. I'm going to call it block content, and this is where the main content of any other application or any other template is going to be rendered. And you're going to see how this works. This is really one of the cool things about Django. So after that, we're going to do end block. And with that, I'm going to take in this whole file. I'm going to copy everything. I'm going to go up to where our base is, and then I'm just going to paste that in. So with all of this said and done, I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to add another div just to get rid of that error, and that should fix that. Then we want to just basically add in these partials into the application itself. So where the sidebar is, I'm just going to do kind of the same thing that I did with the block. I'm just going to say include, and we're just going to be pointing to partials, backslash, and we want to do sidebar, so underscore sidebar. And then I'm just going to copy this. Then we want to do the top bar, which is right here. So include partials underscore top bar. And then we want to do the footer, which is going to be down here. So include partials backslash underscore footer. So with all of this said and done, we can go up to the top. I'm going to go up here, and we've got to add a few things. So I'm going to do a load static, and this is going to be bringing in our static files into this main folder. So load static, and then we also want to do load static files. So load static files. So with all of this set up, now we could point all of our static files into the actual application itself. So anything, for example, like the header, we have these important CSS and all these other links. So you want to go up to the front, you want to do percentage side, and then you want to do static, and this is just going to point to this right here. So this is a vendor fonts awesome CSS class. As you can see, we don't have that within our static folder. So I'm gonna have to bring back in that file, and then we can scroll down and I can see vendor right here. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna add it into, we can't add it into the static folder, we have to add it into our main application. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna add it into that static folder. And with that, we can do that. Wait for everything to transfer over. So with everything brought into our static folder, we got this new vendor file. So I'm gonna go up here again. I'm just gonna do python manage.py collect static again. And with this, it's gonna copy all the new folders. You wanna say yes. And then a lot of more static files were copied over, so that's good. Now we can go back into our base again. And as you can see, that is actually connected. Then we want to work our way down to this. So I'm gonna do static. And it's anything that isn't like, that has this highlight on it, you kind of want to do that. If it's just a basic HTML, that's fine. You don't need to actually change it. And we want to scroll down to our footer where we should have these scripts also. So now I want to bring in these, so static, and we're just going to point everything. Copy this over, move it into there, and then we're just going to continue on down. It's going to be worth it once all this is over because, like I said, this really does wonders at making everything look pretty. Because these Bootstrap themes, this is just a really basic one, but you can get some really quality Bootstrap themes if you're willing to pay for it a little bit. And I think that they're totally worth your time because of the value that these actually give you, because it gives you so much of a starting point to kind of build off of, as far as all of these JavaScripts already integrated, all of the hard work involved with CSS and all that other stuff, it's already integrated. So if you just are trying to get something out fast, or you just really don't want to build all that's months worth of work as far as all the CSS and all the other components that are needed for these templates. So like I said, if you're trying to get something quality out there, I think that they're totally worth your time and money. So with that, we are good to go. Now we can actually scroll back up to our home file, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into our home file itself, and then we want to just get rid of everything. So we're just going to delete everything, and then I'm just going to do a extends, and this is going to be pointing to our base HTML, so base HTML, and then we want to do a load static, so load static, and then we want to do block content, so block content, and then we want to do in block. And after that, within here, we can do an H1, and we're just going to say home page again. So with that, let's scroll down, and we're going to do python manage.py run server, and we're going to see what we get here. This is going to be a lot prettier. So after it's done loading up, look at this beauty, right? I'm telling you, now we have our dashboard, we have our homepage right here. This is where this is where the magic's gonna happen. This was fast as far as, saving us time. We get something that's quality. We bring in, none of these are really connected right now, but we can actually put our dashboard right here in this beautiful blank spot, and we have something that looks pretty and we can kind of build off of. So with that, let's actually dive back into the code, and now we get to go into the fun of bringing in the dashboard itself. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to go back into our main app folder, I'm going to go into our settings, I'm going to close out this running, and then we need to do a pip install. So for this next pip install, I'm going to go back up here. We're going to be focusing on this GitHub right here. I'm going to go into the online documentation that really talks about configuration and everything. So if we go into configuration, it says pip install django-plotly-dash. So that's the first thing that we're going to need to do. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to paste that in, and we're going to run that so that we can install everything that we're going to need on that end. So with all of that installing, it takes a little bit because it's bringing in Flask, it's bringing in a bunch of other stuff, but while that is installing, I'm going to go back down here. We need to add it into our installed apps. So I'm going to copy this right here, and I'm going to go back up, and I'm going to scroll up to our installed apps, And while that is all situating, I'm going to paste that in. So that is good. And then I'm going to go back into the documentation. We need to add the pattern to our URL patterns. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back into our URL patterns. So our URL's right here. And then I'm going to just paste that in like that. So that is looking good too. Then we can go back, continue down. We need to make migrations. We need to set up Redis. So there's a lot to do here. So I'm gonna go back into our settings file. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna install Redis and channels. So if we go back into the documentation, you can see that we have pip install channels, Daphne Redis, django-Redis, channels-Redis. So you just wanna copy this, and I'm gonna go back into the application itself. And then I'm just going to do that pip install. And it's going to add everything into our application. And then we just want to bring it into our installed applications. So I'm going to go over here. And then I want to reference channels is one. You got to wait for everything to index. And then we're also going to need channels Redis. So channels underscore Redis. So those are the two imports that we need to bring in. It's going to take a little bit for my IED to basically go through all the files and index everything. But after that, we can actually scroll down a little bit. And I'm going to go up to this part, and I'm going to start bringing in the stuff for Django and Plotly. So in order to kind of get this set up, we need to basically set up a Bootstrap theme for whenever we bring in these Dash and Plotly applications. So I'm going to do a crispy, and I'm going to do underscore template, and I want to do underscore pack, and I'm going to make sure that that is going to be equal to Bootstrap 4. Cool. So with that set up, now I can work my way down, and we're going to want to set up routing for channels and all that. So it's going to be ASGI. We're going to make sure that that's going to have an underscore application, and that's going to be equal to the name of the app, which is going to be Plotly underscore Django underscore tutorial, or whatever you called your application, dot routing dot applications. So with that, then we want to go up here, and we're going to create a routing file. So we're going to go up here, we're going to create a new Python file, and we're just going to call it routing. And within this routing file, we're just going to do an open. So we're going to do from channels, still indexing, so channels.routing. We want to import protocol type router. Okay, so the indexing is done. I'm finally in business. Then we want to go down. We want to go into application. Is going to equal protocol router, and this is going to be open to a blank dictionary. And we can add stuff in here later on, but for right now, that's just going to get us up and running. Then we want to go back into our settings file, and then we're going to add a few more things. For example, we want to check out the channel layers. So for our channel underscore layers, we want to make sure that is going to be equal to a dictionary, and within here we're going to do default, and that's going to be open up to another dictionary, and then we want to reference our backend, and within here we want to do channels underscore Redis dot core dot Redis channels layers, and then we want to do the configuration. So for config, we're going to make sure that's going to be open to another dictionary, and within here we're going to have host, and this hosts is going to be equal to a list, and within here we want to basically add in 127.0.0.1, and then we're going to add in the port, which is going to be 6379, and then we can add a trailing comma after that is all done. We can add another trailing comma after that. And then we can kind of scroll down, and what we want to do is we want to go and we want to create a static files finder folder. So in order to do this, we're just going to do static files underscore finder, Finders is going to equal a blank list. Within here, we're going to be adding django.contrib. Then we want to point to static files .finder .file system finder. Cool. Then we want to do the same thing, kind of, where we're going to do django.contrib static files finders app directories finder. Then we're going to do django_plotly-dash finders dash app assets finder. And then we want to point to django_plotly-dash finders dash components finder. And now that that is all done, we can move on down and we can create our settings for our Plotly components. So this is just going to address Plotly. So we'll do Plotly_components. And this is going to equal a list. And within this list, we want to basically bring in dash_core_components. Then we want to bring in dash_HTML_components. And then we want to bring in dash_render. And then lastly, we want to bring in the components themselves. So we're going to go down, which is going to be dpd_components. So that brings everything that we're going to need in for that. Then we can scroll down, and we might need to bring in a few more things, but I'm going to try to do it as minimalistic as possible right now just to get this thing working. So I'm going to go back up into our actual home directory. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this file, we're going to call it dash_apps. And within here, we're going to create a new folder, which is going to be finished _apps. And then we can also create a testing apps file if you want. But within here, we can create a Python file, and we will do a simple example. So just to get this thing working, I'm going to be bringing in a very simple application that we built along our journey. If you guys remember the slider one, which that's the one I'm bringing into this application, it is called slider.py while we were building it out in our Udemy tutorial. So I'm just going to paste that code in. And what we're going to do is we're going to change a few things where we aren't going to import dash anymore. So we can get rid of that. And I'm going to go up and I'm going to do a import the Django dash. So we're going to do from django-plotly-dash. We want to import, and we want to do Django dash. And then from there, we want to get rid of dash and the other dash. We're just going to do Django dash. And we want to get rid of this name right here. We want to actually give it a name. So I'm going to do a simple example as the name. And then we want to go down and we want to get rid of this if statement. So we're just going to have the return right here. So with that, now we need to work on bringing in this application or this dash app into our actual templates folder. So that's going to be kind of easy to do. Is we're just going to go down, and the way you do this is you basically create a div. So I'm going to create a div, and I want to give it the class name, and then within here I want to basically do the dictionary %, and then you want to do plotly_class. Before we do that, we need to go up again, and I want to load in Plotly. So I'm going to do the %, load plotly-dash, and that's going to fix that error. And then we're going to want to create a name. So I'm going to do name equals, and this is where we point to the name that we just declared in the file. So a simple example. So that's going to be the name of this. And then we want to also give it the attribute of a card. So that's another class, just a regular card to make it look a little bit prettier. And then I'm just going to add the style. So for the style, I'm going to give it the height of 100%. And then I want to give it width. And I want to make sure that the width is going to be equal to 100%. So with that set up, then we can actually bring in our app. So we're going to do $Plotly app, and then we want to do the name is going to equal the same thing that we did up above, simple example, which is the name that we called the app. And then we could do a ratio function, so that just makes it bigger or smaller. So for this one, I'm just going to do a ratio, and I'm going to make sure that that's going to be equal to 0.65. So that looks good to me. Now we need to actually do a little bit more before this actually renders. So within the URLs file, we need to bring in this app right here. So in order to do that, we're just going to basically point to it. So we're going to do from home dot, then we're going to point to dash apps. Then after that, we want to go to finish apps. And then from there, we want to import, and we're going to import simple example. So this isn't going to actually be referenced anywhere. The weird thing about this in particular, whenever you're working within this plotly-dash module, is you just have to import it. So if you want to bring in any other dash applications, you need to make sure that you are importing it into the URLs, and that helps it render beforehand. It's kind of weird, but it does the trick. So with that, we still need to go into our templates folder. We need to go into our base folder, and this is where we need to add a little bit of magic as far as Plotly is concerned. So basically, we need to add in a script at the top of the head, and this is going to allow our stuff to actually render. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to just paste it in, and it's basically script source, and it basically points to this cdn.plotly /plotly latest .minimum JavaScript, and this will actually allow us to actually get something to render on the screen. So with that, let's actually see this bad boy in action. Let's see where we made any mistakes or what's going on. So I'm gonna do a Python manage.py run server again, and hopefully we don't have any major issues. So we have our first issue, dash render. That's actually wrong. It's supposed to be renderer. So I'm gonna go back into our main application, go into our settings, see where that's at. That's right here within the Plotly components. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add an extra ER at the end of that, and that should fix that. So let's see if this reruns again, and it's looking promising. So I know I totally forgot something, so it's not gonna work. So yeah, I know what's going on here. We need to do a migrate. So I'm gonna go back in here. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm gonna do a Python manage.py make migrations. And then I want to do a Python manage.py migrate. And if that should work, we can see that we applied django-plotly-dash again. So with that, let's do Python manage.py run server, and we can see if it works this time. So I'm refreshing it. So django-plotly-dash can't handle multiple callback outputs. So what this is in reference to is, for the longest time, Plotly and, well, Dash in particular, it couldn't handle multiple outputs. They just updated it, so now it can. The only issue is this module can't sustain that. So if we go back into our actual home application, we go into our Dash app, we go into our finish apps, we can go into our simple example, we can scroll up. The thing that is causing this error is basically we have multiple callbacks, and I did this on purpose just to show you guys what is going on here. So in order to fix this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this HTML div right here at the very end. And that was in relation to this one. And then we need to get rid of the list wrapping out this output. So we're going to get rid of that list, get rid of that list, get rid of this comma. So we only have one comma here. And with that, we want to go down to where this is. We're going to delete that, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to let this re-render again. I'm going to go back into the application, refresh it, and we're going to see what's going on here. And here we go. So we have the square root slider, and it has actually rendered. So I'm pretty proud of that. As you can see here, you can actually refresh everything, and you can, alter it and work with it. And this is how you can get that to work. There's some tricky methods as far as how you can go about rendering out multiple outputs. I'll make that in another video to kind of show that off. But the whole point of this in particular was just getting a Plotly application to render within Django. So that's the main thing that I wanted to kind of show you guys. So with that, I want to also do one more thing, and I'm going to show you guys how to also render in a Plotly graph, because this is a Dash app is what we have rendered in right now, which is different than a Plotly app. Because you can look in the documentation, we've kind of been covering it in our Udemy tutorial. We've mainly been focusing on Dash, but there are more static graphs that you can build with just Plotly itself. And now I'm going to show you guys how to bring that into your Django application also, because we've done most of the legwork and it isn't going to take all that much more time. So I'm going to jump back into here, and then we're going to go into our views, all right? And within here, we're going to just create a simple view, and this is going to help us render out what we're going to want. So we need to bring in some stuff first. So we're going to do from Plotly .offline, we want to import plot. Then we also want to bring in an import of Plotly.graph objects, and then we want to reference it as go. So within here, we can get rid of this requests, and we're just going to do a request. I'm going to go down, and I'm going to just create another function within here. So I'm going to do a def, and within here, I'm just going to do a scatter. So scatter, and this is going to be our scatter chart, just a really simple scatter chart. Like I said, if you've been watching other tutorial videos, you can make these a lot more in depth, but what I'm focusing on here is showing you guys the process of getting this to just render something, right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to make it very, very simple. We're just going to create the x-axis of a list, and this list is just going to have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And then we're going to want to make a y-axis, so I'm just going to do y1, and I'm going to make sure that that is going to be equal to a list. We can pick any numbers we want, but we just want 4 to match the x-axis that we've already created. So I'm just going to do 30, and then I'll do 35, and then I'll do 25, and then I'll do 45. So that's what I'm going to do for that. Then we want to set up our trace, so that we're going to trace our scatter. So we're just going to do trace is going to equal go.scatter. And within here, we want to label our x-axis, and that's going to be equal to x1. Then we want to work our way down to our y, and our y is going to be equal to y1. So then we want to set up our layout, and our layout is going to be layout equals a dictionary, and within this dictionary, we want to add the title of the graph itself. So I'll just do title, that's going to be equal to simple graph is what I'm just going to name it. Then we want to reference our x-axis, so I'm just going to do x-axis, and I'm going to make sure that that is going to be equal to a dictionary. And within this dictionary, I'm going to do range, and I'm going to make sure that range is going to be equal to a list with a minimum value, and I'm going to make this minimum value reference the x-axis 1, and then I want to do the maximum value also referencing x1. Then we're going to work our way down to the y-axis, so y-axis, that is going to equal a dictionary. But we're just going to be following the same thing. So range is going to be equal to a list, and then we want the minimum of y1, and then we want the maximum of y1. All right, and then we want to basically create this figure object. This is going to be equal to go.figure, and it's going to be taking in data. And this data is going to be equal to a list where we're going to be referencing our trace model that we just created. And then we also want to bring in our layout, and that is going to be equal to layout. So with that done, we can create this plot underscore div object, and this is going to equal plot. And then we want to basically reference our figure right up above. And then we want to make sure that the output type is going to be equal to a div. And then we want to include Plotly JavaScript. So we're going to do include Plotly JavaScript, and we want to make sure that is equal to false. So with that done, we can actually return, and this is going to return Plotly div. All right. Then we want to go down, and we're going to create this context. And this context is going to be equal to a dictionary. And within this dictionary, we just want to add the term of plot. And this is just going to be referencing this function up above. So we're just going to call this scatter. And with that, we can come down to after this HTML is rendered, add another comma, and then we can just add context. So with all of this said and done, we can go back into our templates folder, go into our welcome, and we can actually add it into our site. So I'm just going to do a BR just to provide a little bit of space, and then we can just do this, and we can add in the plot. And the reason why I'm calling this plot is if we go back into our views, that's what this is named. So if I name this, plot 1, then I'd have to come up here and I'd have to name this plot 1. And then we want to add a line. I don't know the correct term for that, but then we're just going to add safe. So with all of this said and done, if I go back into the application itself and I refresh it, we have our first graph, which is looking good. We can scroll down and we have this one also. So we have our simple graph right here, which is just a simple scatter chart that we could see. So like I said, this still has all the functionality, zoom in, zoom out, take pictures, all that other good stuff. Later on, I can show you guys how to actually connect this into your database, how to reference user models. There's a lot that you can actually do with this. But like I said, the first initial thing that I wanted to focus on in this video, which is a lot and it's intensive, is getting you guys set up so that you can actually bring in your Dash or Plotly, graphs that you're building out into your Django application. So with that, I hope that this is a valuable video. I hope you guys learned a lot, and I will see you guys in the next release.